News of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm.
Welcome to another edition of American Heartland. I am your host, Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Thank you so much for joining me today. And every week, hopefully, as we take a journey together, covering the headlines of the week, the stories that matter to you and to me. And the biggest story of all recently is the Clinton criminal scandalous operations, all their criminal scandalous operations. All the news of that is just pouring forth in one report after the other. Even left-wing organizations like the Washington Post and the New York Times have had no choice but to fill the public in on how bad the situation is becoming. There is a headline article featured in the New York Times titled "Cash Flowed to the Clinton Foundation as Russians Pressed for Control of Uranium Company." It is a damning, scathing report, and this should sink the Clintons once and for all. If there is any justice in America, if there is any fairness, her poll numbers should sink like a stone. If you have a public that is attentive, that is educated on the issues, there is no way that Hillary Clinton can become the nominee for the Democrats or the next president of the United States. I know those are big ifs, but as we all do our part, we are seeing results. Her poll numbers are indeed declining. There is a report now that indicates that as Marco Rubio surges, he's pulling in almost neck and neck with Hillary Clinton. And that hasn't happened in a while. Everyone was saying for the longest time that Hillary Clinton would have a huge lead over Republicans. And we're seeing her numbers slowly plummet. Her unfavorable rating is getting higher by the day. And more Americans mistrust her than trust her now, according to recent polls. But let's look at why. It's because of reports like this. It appears that Hillary Clinton and her husband Bill Clinton, through the Clinton Foundation, made a deal so that a wealthy donor of the Clintons sold off his uranium company. So essentially, this guy sold off the uranium company to the Russians. The Russians obviously paid him a pretty penny for it. The Clintons received cash in two ways. They got money from the donor who provided funds into the Clinton Foundation, and then the Russians paid Bill Clinton $500,000 for a speech. In order for this uranium deal to go through, it had to be approved by the State Department. And now it remains to be seen, can we find email traces? We know we're not going to find any email traces from Hillary's server and Bill Clinton's server. She destroyed as much of that as she possibly could. But can we find email traces in the State Department where she had oversight over this deal? Now, this is going to be damning either way. If she had oversight over this deal, that is a clear conflict of interest. That is a clear ethical breach. That should subject her to criminal prosecution. If she failed to exercise oversight over this, that shows you what a negligent, incompetent Secretary of State she was. Either way, in this regarding this particular case, she will be seen as either incorrigibly corrupt or incorrigibly negligent and incompetent, not doing due diligence at her job. Either scenario is really damning for her, because the Republicans now can begin to show a pattern that in Benghazi, even if you give her the benefit of the doubt, she was negligent in ensuring that the compound was properly protected. So they can play the negligent and incompetent card throughout the election campaign, or they can play the corrupt card with all the information that is coming out. It is indeed noteworthy that a story like this is featured in the New York Times, and it is a really detailed story. Why is the New York Times covering it? Well, in part because of a book that's coming out, a really damning book that is going to detail all of the Clinton transactions, all of the ways in which they made over $100 million just in the 12 years after Bill Clinton left office, and then another $100 million subsequent to that. All of this information is coming out in a damning book, and the Clintons so far have failed to respond adequately. One of the things now that is being looked at in detail is all of the forms that the charity filled out. The Wall Street Journal reports that so much of the filings are now being corrected. We're talking about 3, 4, 5 years worth of filings are being corrected by the Clinton Foundation. They're saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We forgot this donor. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we should have listed him. I'm sorry we didn't do that." So you're seeing now an attempt to clean up the mess. And the more we probe, the more we see elements of what is now being called nothing other than a giant fiasco. As it appears, the Clinton Foundation had a board. Now, look, I ran a nonprofit, so I know how this works. The board is supposed to exercise a lot of vigilance and control over every single thing, especially a monetary transaction that a nonprofit does. As it appears, the Clinton Foundation had a board that really wasn't exercising much oversight. And the Clintons were basically running it themselves. And as a result, now there are a lot of questions being raised, especially about an auditing company like Price Waterhouse that was supposed to be overseeing all of this, all of these filings that are given to the government because it's a tax-exempt organization. So we're seeing just how much the Clinton Foundation was essentially a sham to possibly protect the Clintons from criminal prosecution, from doing what we now know for sure that they were doing. The reports are just unbelievable. We know, for example, that 60 companies that lobbied the State Department while she was Secretary of State also gave the Clinton Foundation money. It is just unbelievable. And the reports are very detailed. I mean, they detail the specific individuals who were donors. They detail the specific instances in which Bill Clinton subsequently received cash. So there's just basically, in essence, a mountain of evidence building. And it's going to be very, very difficult to stop this new book from being a runaway bestseller and from sparking so many questions that are going to continue to dodge Hillary Clinton no matter how fast she tries to run, no matter all the spin that she and her entire team put forward. You know, recently when she was in New Hampshire, she was asked a lot of questions about all these allegations, and she said that they are simply distractions. Well, she's wrong. They're not distractions, and she's not going to be able to keep dodging. Sooner or later, she's going to have to answer questions, and the problem she faces, these are questions that she really can't answer. I've poured through so many of these reports, and there's no possible explanation except that she and he are criminals. And I've been saying it the whole time. They are white-collar criminals, and I truly hope they end their days not again in the White House, but in the prison house. That's where they belong. They belong behind bars. So the book is called Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary Rich. It's by Peter Schweitzer. He is a well-known author. He has a very good reputation, and in fact, Fox News is also going to has done an expose on this book, also chronicling all of the details. So you have news organizations from the left and the right corroborating so much of what Mr. Schweitzer has written in his book. And the Clintons try to say, well, we had some programs in place and we had some governments giving us money. And this has nothing to do with what Hillary Clinton was actually doing in the course of her job. Those two things are separate. But in fact, we can see that there are links. There was a free trade agreement in Colombia, for example, that benefited a major foundation donor's natural resources investments in the South American nation. Again, there was a $1 million in payments to Mr. Clinton by Canadian Bank and a major shareholder in the Keystone oil pipeline around the time that the project was being debated in the State Department. So you see, at the very least, she was in a perpetual conflict of interest. And at the worst, which I believe is the truth, she and Bill Clinton were deliberately defrauding essentially foreign nations and the American public because they were using the State Department to pimp out favors, and they were essentially not doing the work of diplomacy that they should have been doing, that she especially should have been doing, but she was simply raising as much cash as she could for her and her family. The problems they face now are huge because as they refile so many of the tax returns, even just in the refiling process, there's an author who points out, this is a piece that's come out of Reuters, an author points out they're so egregious, the errors, that just the reporting might set them up for criminal prosecution. Just the way that they did not properly file the forms that they needed to file as a nonprofit could set them up for criminal prosecution. Never mind everything they did in terms of using the State Department to pimp out favors to various people around the world so that they could get richer. The problems are monumental. And I've been saying this from the very first time we broke the story. There is a huge rat here, and it will shock me. I'm saying shock me if something dramatic doesn't happen in the course of the campaign in the next coming months, in the sense that I don't see how Hillary Clinton, no matter what some pundits are saying, I don't see how she'll be able to survive this. And remember, so many times we conservatives, we've beat the drum. Initially, we've beat the drum and the public wasn't on our side necessarily. And we opened their eyes and we transformed public opinion. And the same thing is going to happen on this. We're really those of us who are covering it very slowly and very carefully and very early on, saying these problems are so colossal that it'll be almost impossible for Hillary Clinton to swim out of it as a nominee for the as a nominee for the Democrats, let alone as a candidate for president. And she and Bill Clinton will be very, very lucky if they just escape all of this without ending up in jail. What we are seeing is we have two white-collar criminals, and they are at the head of the Democratic Party. And it is a travesty that they have been allowed to do this, that they were allowed to get away with it as far as they've gotten away with it. And it is incomprehensible to me that we should be even entertaining for one moment that this woman deserves the platform that she is currently being given. You know what's really surprising in all this? You still have she still garners the support of 60% of Democrats. I mean, those have got to be the stupidest, most moronic people in this country to be supporting her as all this information comes out. And I do not see any credible defense. I want to give you an example of somebody trying to defend her. This is the best they can do so far. This is Howard Dean on Morning Joe. Listen to this.
First of all, I think the accusations are somewhat different between Bush and Clinton, assuming this is what's going on. The accusations about Hillary are that the Clinton Foundation took nonprofit cash, none of which went into their pocket, and then in quid pro quo, she supposedly did something for all these donors that gave to these causes.
Well, on the side, but you know, Howard, this is the second time you've said it, so I'm just going to add a little footnote on that. They also got paid money by some of these people for giving speeches, $550,000.
And I think that's
so. I've let you say that 2 times. You have to put the footnote on the second time you do that talking point.
I think that's a legitimate inquiry.
Okay, go ahead.
But the allegation about Jeb Bush, and I'm not saying any of these are true, is that he personally made money by dealing with all these folks. Nonetheless, this is the problem here. I'm not going to accuse the New York Times of having bias. I mean, they do. Everybody has bias. But there is, the author is getting money from donors, big donors, billion Texas, who support Ted Cruz. That is a problem. That is a problem.
You're going back to the author?
But that's a fact.
Okay.
There you go. The cheapest trick in the book. Attack the motives of the author and fail to deal with the details. Howard Dean and all the Clinton cronies, it's just not going to work. And you heard it here. Hillary Clinton is going down.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. Well, you know that the GOP candidates have been bombarding the Northeast, especially New Hampshire. They're all vying and competing, trying to get an edge over one another. The early polls, as I said just in the other segment, the polls coming out now are indicating that Marco Rubio is emerging as the top GOP contender. And he is now actually in a 2-point margin war with Hillary Clinton. So they're going neck and neck. It's really, really early. I wouldn't put too much stock on this. I remember the last time around with the GOP nominees, you had a different person at the top almost every other week or second week. So this is really early on in the race. But we have a special treat for you today. We have Bill Cooksey, the executive producer of WRKO's The Kuhner Report. He is our man on the spot. He was there up close and personal with so many of these GOP candidates, and he's going to give us the inside scoop. Welcome to the show.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic.
Are you exhausted?
I am.
Have you done enough? Visiting in the countryside, and you've experienced exactly what all the candidates experience, the way they actually live and campaign?
I wonder how they do it for as long as they do, when all you really see is pavement and people, and pavement and people, and fast food joints and pavement and people.
Yeah, and how do they do it without completely blowing up? Right, blowing up their waistlines.
About the second day into it, I wanted to just tell everybody off. Go away.
And
how they keep smiling is beyond me.
Yeah, and I guess they have to answer the same questions again and again.
The same speech. The same question.
The same questions, exactly. And also, we have to add, now that you're a man on the spot, I have heard through the grapevines that sometimes when you're in the countryside, it's very difficult to find basic facilities like a decent restroom, right?
Yeah, because they have outhouses.
Oh.
and the person I was with refused to use an outhouse, so I had to ask the guy at the shooting range if there was a bathroom, and he looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "No, there's an outhouse." And I said, "Well, the lady I'm with, she won't use it." And he said, "City folk, huh?" I said, yeah, city folks.
Right. Well, you've experienced all the efforts that these candidates are making, and they're going to make it for a long time as this nominating season, it seems to get longer and longer every year. Well, you know what? We're really eager to get the inside scoop on every single one of the people that you saw up close and personal. Let's begin with Rick Perry. What did you see from him? Did you actually talk to him behind the scenes too? Tell us what happened.
Okay, I did talk to Rick Perry a little bit behind the scenes. When he came up to New Hampshire, he went to an event they call Politics and Eggs, where they give a speech and then he signs one of your wooden eggs. It's sort of a tradition up there. I was standing there waiting for him to come in. I didn't know which entrance he came in, and he walked up behind me and grabbed me by the shoulder and spun me around and said, how y'all doing? With that big, thick Texas cowboy accent. And I just looked at it. I said, I'm doing wonderful. How are you? And, weather's nice. He did a lot of small chat with me. Didn't really get into much else. And then he went off and did his pictures. I liked him because he really seemed like just one of the guys, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, it does. He's got a great folksy way of connecting with people. In fact, I wrote an article about him early on in the previous campaign where I thought that his use of language was masterful. Unfortunately, what happened during the campaign is the handlers got a hold of him, and then he started to talk Washington speak, and then he lost his soul somewhere along the way. So I'm glad you're seeing a Rick Perry that has his soul back.
Well, I saw the one you saw as well, because the little interaction I had with him before his speech and after his speech, he was very much, and it's cliche in presidential races, but he's a guy I could have a beer with. Mm-hmm. He seemed like just a normal guy I could have a beer with. And then he went up and gave his speech, and it was just full of the sort of cliched Washington speak. Let me hit all the right notes. I'm not going to offend anybody with this, and I'm going to make everyone happy with this. And I was really let down by it.
Right, so the authentic guy that you saw became totally inauthentic by the time he was up on the stage.
And you know what really upset me the most about it? I looked at him, and I liked him when he ran before, despite his whoops moment where he forgot the departments he wanted to get rid of. I liked him in that race. And I liked him going into this one, but when I watched him give the speech and noticed how he was so able to flip and go from normal guy to a totally fake politician really disturbed me.
You know what? And that's very perceptive, because for him to do that, it shows that he's willing to make compromises that are very large. And that's not a small compromise. Somebody asks you to transform your personality. I wouldn't do it. I would say absolutely not. You take me or leave me. Take me as I am or forget about it. That's what I would say.
And I guess the good thing about that is, though, 98% of the electorate isn't going to see the guy I saw before and after the speech. They're only going to see that guy.
Yeah, and the sad thing is the guy that you saw, the authentic one, had he just remained true to form, that's the guy that could possibly have a chance to win. Not this Washington construction, which makes everybody want to vomit.
Which is kind of why I liked George W. Bush, because he was the same way, off the podium and on the podium and off the podium. He didn't really have a switch where he became Mr. Washington all of a sudden.
Yeah, and if you notice, Rick Perry suddenly has these glasses. He's trying to look very cerebral.
Yes.
Does he need those glasses? Can you give us some insight? Does he need them?
No, I'm looking at him thinking, just put a cowboy hat on.
I think those glasses are a prop, because he was basically laughed out of the race last time as somebody that didn't have a brain, and now he wants to just look like he has a brain, but he actually looks dorky and stupid with those glasses on.
Well, they're the Hollywood glasses, aren't they? They don't have a frame. They're just the glasses with the rims that go around your head. Very astute, very Harvard-looking, and he puts them down on the end of his nose as if he's being very intellectual about whatever he's saying. But
so you actually saw him with the glasses on. You saw him with those glasses on.
I saw him he took them out of his pocket, and then he put them on, and then he adjusted them, and I'm like, oh, give me a break. Right. And then he had his binder with the speech in it. Actually, with the binder with the speech that he kept flipping, and that I didn't like that either, because he would talk, and then he would look down and read, and then he'd look back at us and talk, and I'm thinking, you want to be president, man? Give it to me from the gut.
Give it to me from the heart. Yeah, give it to me from the heart.
Feel right here. Why do you got to read this?
Right. Awesome. Okay, so tell us about somebody else. So we're not too much a fan of Rick Perry, bombed in your book. Okay.
John Bolton.
Okay, John Bolton, but he hasn't announced his candidacy yet. But tell us your thoughts.
Yet. No, but he's going to announce. Mm-hmm. It might not be soon, but he's going to run. That guy, that is Mr. America to the bone. I mean, that guy is awesome. And I've only seen him in like 2-3 minute clips on Fox News. I've never seen him give a long speech, and I've never talked to him before. I talked to him in New Hampshire, and then I heard him give the speech, and all I could think about was Yosemite Sam, the cartoon character with the mustache, but so tough. If John Wayne came back to life, he would be John Bolton.
But this is the problem with John Bolton. Look, I saw John Bolton in Washington, D.C. I got to know him well there. I saw him give a speech once especially. And I do not think that he has mass appeal. He does. Look, I think he's brilliant. I think he's competent. I like him. This guy would be an awesome Secretary of State. Yeah. But I don't think he's presidential timber. I don't think he has enough charisma. And I think, what the problem with him is, Cooksey? He's too snide and sarcastic. And that's a bit of a turnoff for the top job.
You're absolutely right, and he only talks national security and foreign policy. I've yet to hear him talk about economics or domestic issues, but I think he wants to run basically to make national security an issue in the presidential race, and for the reason most of them run, which is to get a spot in the cabinet somewhere else.
Well, though, I find that humorous. Do we need somebody to run to make national security an issue? It is an issue. I mean, it's in the news every single night. We don't need somebody to run just for that. I would advise him not to waste his time and energy. I don't think his candidacy would go anywhere.
No, but I think he'll say things that might get the other candidates to follow along when they see the poll numbers for him in those specific areas ticking up.
Right.
For someone like Rand Paul, we had a town hall with John Bolton, and I talked to him after the event, and I said to him, I really like everything you say, and I got to tell you the truth. I feel as if you were president, and we got attacked, you would pick up the phone and say, who was it, and how many bombs do we have? Like, you wouldn't play around. You would just kill everybody. And he just looked at me and kind of nodded, and I mean, this is great. This is awesome.
Right.
But, so you look at him and his foreign policy and his sort of what he'd like to do national security-wise, as opposed to someone like Rand Paul, who's very much of an isolationist. And you think, wow, Rand Paul's much scarier now that I look at him compared to a John Bolton.
Well, look, the problem with Bolton is he's almost got the opposite problem of someone like Rick Perry. Rick Perry has this folksy appeal, and he tries to be an intellectual, but he's really not. John Bolton is the opposite. He really is an intellectual, and it's obvious he's an intellectual. And what I've seen in American politics, Cooksey, is that intellectuals have a very hard time getting that mass enthusiasm. And for that reason, too, and this is kind of the fault of the American public rather than Bolton, I don't think his candidacy is going to go anywhere. He's too brilliant.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
You're probably right.
Tell us about Rand Paul.
Going into meeting Rand Paul, I was a big Rand Paul fan. I'm not a huge supporter of his father, but I did like Rand Paul. After meeting him, I do not like him at all. I think we were in Milford, New Hampshire, when he announced that he was running for the presidency. And his speech was just full of applause lines and things that he could never possibly do. He talks about, term limits for Congress. It's never going to happen. Why are you even saying it? Just so everyone will clap. It's ridiculous. Then we met him afterwards. And unlike the rest of the people I've met, he was the only one that didn't look you in the eye and acted as if he had somewhere better to be. Mm-hmm. And was constantly trying to get away from you. And this goes a long way, and I know people might not think a lot of it, but his handshake was very dainty. It was just like I shook his hand, and I didn't know if I was really shaking someone's hand because it was there. It was
you know
flimsy.
What? People think a lot of that. I do, too. I can't stand a weak handshake. And I can tell you something else, Cooksey. Based on my years in Washington, D.C., I'd often go to these cocktail parties. You had so many people who would say hi, and then they would be looking around the room like you're not that important and looking for the next person to go and network with. And so he's become a creature of Washington, if this is what you're describing. That's Washington is full of that, and I call them mutants. They're not human. They don't even connect with the person that's right in front of them.
No, and that was right in front of him. There was no one else around except for his handlers. But he just wanted to get away. He just wanted to walk away. It was really upsetting the way that he acted.
Well,
I didn't like it at all.
You know what, Cooksey, I've been a huge critic of his foreign policy. So based on what you tell me, his effete handshake is as effete as his foreign policy vision.
Yeah, yep. And you know another thing, and this I'm getting petty now, but since we're talking about it, he's really short. I was shocked.
What, you're 6'5"? Last time I saw you, you're suddenly 6'5"?
When you're taller than me, I'm going, gee, you versus Al-Qaeda versus ISIS? Come on. Oh, no.
Be careful. You're going to have all the short people writing in and calling in and saying Cooksey has a bias. But you know what? You're making a very good point because American presidents are usually tall. Remember when Dukakis ran? He's a short dude, and his candidacy didn't get very far.
No. I almost feel like he has to stand on, the yellow pages when he gets up to the podium. He's so tiny.
Well, look, I've been saying for a long time that Rand Paul's candidacy is not going to go anywhere. He is just a one-term senator, and also he doesn't have any executive experience, and he's an isolationist no matter what he says. And you know what? For all his vaunted claims to be a man of principle, let's be honest, he's shifted his positions recently to come across more hawkish, and I don't respect that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
Well, listen, Cooksey, you are so fascinating. We're coming up on a break, but can we hold you over for another segment so we can go through some of the others?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, you've been listening to Cooksey, who's filling us in on the GOP candidates. He was there, up close and personal, giving us information you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Deep in your love and stealing me when you're away. Oh, baby, 'cause I really don't care where you are. I just want to be there where you are. And I gotta get away.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
When I'm wiser and I'm older, all this time I was finding myself and
And we're back with Bill Cooksey, the executive producer of the Kuhner Report. He is here with Dr. Grace on American Heartland. We're talking about the GOP candidates who were in New Hampshire, and he got to meet so many of them, look them straight in the eye, shake their hand, smell them, taste them. I mean, he did it all for us. So he's telling us what he thinks about all the candidates. Okay, who's next? There was Marco Rubio. Now, you didn't actually get a chance to see him, but you talked to a lot of people who did.
Yeah, I talked to a couple of people, one guy in particular who shares sort of my views with all the other ones, so I think we're sort of connected when it comes to them. Mm-hmm. And I asked him how Marco Rubio was, and he said I had to wash my hands after I shook his hand. I said, why? And he said, I just got this feeling that it was slime. He's very slimy and slippery. And I don't like Marco Rubio at all. I don't like his bartender story. I don't feel anything when he speaks or when I see him. There's nothing, to me, there's nothing there other than that nice story he tells.
Right, and the slimy handshake is part of the slimy personality who has transformed his position on immigration over and over again. And recently, in an interview to the Spanish news organization, he said that actually he is for comprehensive immigration reform. To Fox News and Hannity, he said he's not for it anymore but he was for it before, and he apologized for that. In other words, he's all over the place. He's pandering to the voters. He can't be trusted.
No, he can't be. I don't like him.
Neither do I. And that brings us to Jeb Bush, who is the establishment favorite. What did you think seeing him up close and personal?
He's very tall.
And we know that scores big for you, the tall guy himself.
He's very thin.
Uh-huh.
I listened to his speech, and here's the moment I casted him off completely, because I go into most of this with an open mind. I have my feelings about some people, but they can be swayed. The moment he said, I'm from Florida, and you don't get much more purple than that, I went, all right, so you're basically Hillary Clinton just an inch to the right. Just enough so that the Republicans can go, I guess we'll take them. Just stats and figures, and let me tell you how I've done everything and please everybody. And have I told you that Florida's a purple state, by the way? Have I told you that Democrats like me, by the way? Oh, by the way, my wife's Hispanic, by the way. It's almost like you get a checklist and he just goes, check, yep, did that.
Yes, and I heard him in an interview saying that he's a staunch conservative and he'll put his conservative record up against anybody's, when at the same time we know he's for comprehensive immigration reform, we know he's for Common Core. But I got to say this about Jeb Bush.
Just the other day, and this should really take him off everyone's ballot, when he says the best thing about the Obama administration is the NSA spying program. I said, why is this guy even a serious candidate at this point? How could anyone take him seriously?
Well, you know what? He's touting all the things that the Wall Street Journal loves. They love the NSA program. They love immigration reform. So, you know, they've been backing him as so many of the establishment donors are. Now, what else did you learn about him? How was he on a personal level? Did he connect with you? Did he interact well with you?
No, he was off-putting. He was a politician, you know. There was no personal connection there. Like I said, this was the politics and eggs thing. So he gives a speech, you go up to him with an egg that he signs. Well, I took 2 eggs off the table because I wanted to give my friend one who was with me. So he signed 1 egg, and then I snuck the other one in front of him. Now, granted, I lied a little bit because usually they don't sign 2 of them. And I said, can you sign this for my grandmother? Because a politician's not going to say no to your grandmother, right?
But he wouldn't have said no even if you said, sign it for me. What would he have said? No? I mean, he is there to sign eggs.
No. He probably would have said no.
No, he would have said yes. Go on anyways.
Okay,
so you decided, you, the man who is pretending to be authentic here in this interview, is telling us how you lied to a politician to get your way.
Oh, I think it's okay considering how often they lie to us. So it's 100 to 1. You know, give me a break. So I signed it. He took it from me, and he starts to put the marker to the egg, and he looks up at me, and he goes, is this really for your grandmother? And I was like floored. I'm like, oh, my God, he's questioning me now. Okay. And I said, yeah. He goes, you know, if you're lying, you're going to hell, right? I said, oh, okay. I don't know what to say. Just sign the egg, man.
But that's actually charming, don't you think? I would have thought you would consider it charming.
It wasn't charming at all.
Why?
I was sort of offended by it. I went, who are you to tell me I'm going to hell? Just sign the egg. Be quiet and sign the egg.
Well, he's interacting with you. A little bit of banter, Cooksey. I say take it easy.
No, he's interacting, but he doesn't know how to interact with people, so it's very awkward. That's what I didn't like about it, is he was very awkward. He didn't know how to talk to a person. And I think that comes from, well, he's a Bush. This is a dynasty. My father was president. My brother was president. I've never had to talk to you people before. Why don't they just give me the White House? Don't they know who I am?
Did you sense from him like he feels entitled to it? Did you read that?
Yes. The whole speech was like that. It was basically, here's everything I've done. What are we waiting for? That's the way it felt.
I'm the one. I'm the savior. Why do I have to interact with you?
Yeah. I do everything the Democrats like, and here's a couple of crumbs for you Republicans, and here's a crumb for you Tea Party lunatics, and let's just get the show on the road here. Is it November yet? That's the way it felt to me.
Right. Did he seem smart? Did he seem knowledgeable?
Yeah, he's smart in what he was talking about, but I don't agree with most of what he was talking about. I mean, you could be smart talking about how great Common Core is. I still think you're dumb if you support Common Core. You can be smart talking about the NSA, but everyone knows the NSA spying on American citizens isn't a good thing. So you can use fancy words and all you want, but I don't like it.
You don't like him. Okay. So
No.
Jeb Bush, it was confirmed. You went in there with an open mind, and you came out confirmed in your total dislike and disdain of him.
I liked him because he was tall.
Right.
So he actually had a one-up when I went in. I said, this guy's tall. We can do something here.
Alrighty. And now the last one, and I know he's your absolute favorite. You got a chance to meet Ted Cruz.
But he was not my favorite going in.
Okay. Tell us about it.
Totally not my favorite going in. I liked him. I liked his filibuster. I liked some of the issues that he stood on, but I've never heard him speak. I've never met him in person. But I met him at that event, and he was so genuine. You just looked at him, and he looked at you, and you felt like you're the only person in the room, and he really cares about what you're saying. And it wasn't like a slimy, like, oh, really? Oh, well, that's just interesting. Let me tell you about what I've done. He was, like, really listening to you. And he gave the speech. They moved the podium off of the stage. No notes. No binder like Rick Perry had. He just spoke. He spoke about the Constitution. He spoke about his values. He spoke about how the direction he sees the country going in. He was very forceful about how he felt about Common Core, about the NSA. And it was a long speech, which was the one thing I didn't like. But I walked away from it going, it felt magical. Does that make sense? It felt like this is the guy at the right time. The right guy at the right time. It's all come together. And then we had him on the show on the Kuhner Report.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, this was like a week later. So I had talked to him, once before the speech, once after the speech, for maybe 2 or 3 minutes at the most. And he called in, and we've had Rand Paul on. We've had a lot of the different politicians on. Called in. I said, hello. He said, hi, this is Senator Cruz. I said, oh, hi, it's Cooksey. He went, Cooksey. And he said it like he's known me forever, and we haven't talked for years. And I went, and I looked at Brittany, who works with us, and I said, I think he likes me. And then he goes to me, and then he says to me, he goes, Cooksey, you've got one name. It's like Beyonce or Madonna. That's how you know you've made it. And I went, this is a real human being I'm talking to. Like, he's funny.
He's funny. He knows how to interact. He also knows how to boost up your ego, make you feel good about yourself. And he's got a good memory, right? He knew your name. He knew who you were. He knew how to interact with you.
Even if his handlers told him beforehand, which I doubt they did. But when Rand Paul calls in, it's, hi, it's Senator Rand Paul. How much time? Okay, 2 minutes? All right, I'll wait. He doesn't even want to talk to you. He doesn't even want to interact with you.
Right. So Ted Cruz, you believe, is a man that is authentic. He's genuine in his convictions. He's genuine in his interaction. Now, let me ask you the $100 million question here. And it is, does he have enough executive experience in the course of his career to lead in this moment of national crisis?
Yes. Yes, he's a senator, which I granted is an executive position, but he was the Solicitor General in Texas. He spoke before the Supreme Court numerous times. He's won many cases, including some for religious freedom, some for gun rights, and it's not just the executive experience. He has a core. He has conviction. He knows who he is. He knows what he stands for, and he won't bend on most of it, if not all of it. And I think that means more to me than how many times have you sat in a CEO's position? How many times have you been in a corner office? How many times have you been a governor or a mayor or any of that? If the guy making the decision has a core and conviction, and I get the feeling that if something came across President Ted Cruz's desk, his first thought is going to be, is this constitutional? And we haven't had that for such a long, long time.
Right. Awesome reporting, Cooksey. Thank you so much for all of your insights. I enjoyed every minute of it.
One more thing about Ted Cruz.
Go ahead.
Just one more thing. We saw him at another event at a church. He was talking about Common Core and all this other stuff. There was like 30, 40 people in the room. Wasn't a lot of people. No cameras, nothing. After the event, there was a mother and her 2 kids, a little girl who's probably 4 and the baby's probably 1. And he's leaving, and he stopped and he played peekaboo with them. No one was around except for me and someone else, but no one was paying attention. And I just thought, every one of those other candidates, Jeb, Rubio, Rand, even Bolton, would have just walked out, got in their truck, and drove away. He stopped to say hello.
Wonderful
and I thought that
story.
was really cool.
That is a wonderful story. I know I'm always moved when I see an authentic interaction between an important person and my children, and this story also moves me. Thank you so much. That was Bill Cooksey, the executive producer of the Kuhner Report, who's given us fascinating and fun insights on the GOP candidates. Thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
You too.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Shut up, just shut up, shut up, 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 shut up, just shut up.
Welcome back, and we are at the Just Shut Up segment, the world famous Just Shut Up segment. And this week, the candidate who deserves the accolade is actor Sean Penn. What did he say now? Well, Sean Penn has been married 2 times, once to Madonna, once to a brilliant actress, Robin Wright Penn. He has 2 grown children with Robin Wright Penn. He divorced that woman and was single for a while. And suddenly all these reports surfaced that he has a new love. And that new woman is none other than the stunning actress Charlize Theron. So they've been dating now for about a year, and he's gushing over her. Recently, he was asked by a reporter on the red carpet, "Is she your girlfriend?" And he said, quote, "She's not my girlfriend. She's the love of my life." End of quote. Now, most people would think, well, that's a romantic statement. That's a firm statement. That's something sweet and nice. Believe it or not, I think that statement showed an appalling lack of judgment. I think it showed how egotistical, self-centered, and selfish he is. And I'll tell you why. I just explained that he was married to Robin Wright Penn for about 14 years, and he has 2 children with Robin Wright Penn. Now, how do you think it makes the children feel to hear their father say that this other woman, this young woman, is not just a girlfriend, she's quote-unquote the love of his life? That's a put-down to their mother. If I was one of their children, I would be, first of all, really angry at him for obviously slighting their mother in public, slighting their marriage. And also, it's a put-down to the children that he had with the mother, too, because that was the family that they had then. So what was that? Some kind of second-rate love in which you conceive these children? You know, even if Charlize Theron is the love of his life, which, by the way, I don't believe. I mean, this woman is drop-dead gorgeous. He's obviously in the throes of deep lust and infatuation over her. I don't think this is going to be the love of his life. This will probably end up being divorce number 3, but that's just the cynic in me. But let's just say I'm wrong, and this is the love of his life. You know what? You might say that to her in private, but you should never say that in public where your children could hear such a statement. And in another report, he said that if he were to marry Charlize Theron, this would be his first marriage. This guy must be on drugs because, look, it's a matter of fact that he was married to Madonna, which is marriage number 1. It's a matter of fact that he was married to Robin Wright Penn, which is marriage number 2. This would be marriage number 3. But he's saying it's the first marriage because he knows things now that he never knew before. Again, that is so disrespectful to the mother of your children and the other women that you walk down the aisle with. You know, it's one thing to divorce once and then twice, and to be now having a very young, beautiful woman on your arm, I would think that just those actions shows a very selfish, self-centered man. But he's taking it to a whole new level where he's dissing his previous wives, dissing the mother of his children, and dissing the marriage that he had in which those children were conceived. You know what, Sean Penn? Just shut the hell up.
Hey, let's get it now.
And now let's go to our grab bag. You know, this week there was a really unique and rare moment on Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace was interviewing Senator Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is a ferocious hawk on foreign policy. And the first part of the interview, he was explaining how the Senate is not going to approve of any deal that the president makes with Iran. And again, he was touting his hawkish credentials. However, the last part of the interview was really surprising because Chris Wallace asked a really deeply personal question, and Lindsey Graham responded very candidly. Listen.
Finally, Senator, we got about a minute left. There was an article in the Washington Post this week that I must say told me a lot of things that I didn't know about you. It detailed the fact that when you were at the University of South Carolina as an undergraduate, you lost both your mom and your dad within 15 months, and that you basically brought up and supported your then 13-year-old sister, Darlene, and some of your friends suggested that might have been a reason why you never got married. We can't put you on the psychiatrist couch, but how did those traumatic events, how did they shape your life, sir?
It changed me. It made me realize that the promise of tomorrow is just a promise, that I assumed things early on I never assume again. It taught me how much I was loved by the rest of my family. My aunt and uncle helped me raise my sister. Social Security survivor benefits coming into my family made a world of difference. I moved in with an aunt and uncle who helped raise my sister, never made over $25,000 in her life working in textile plants. My mom's disease, Hodgkin's disease, wiped us out financially. We eventually lost our businesses. I understand we're all one car wreck away from needing help, but what it told Lindsey Graham above all else is that family, friends, and faith really do matter, and I'm a lucky man to have had all the support I've had all these years, and I'm trying my best to pay back a country who's been so good to me. I love my sister, and to all those who've helped me all these years, thank you so much.
It was a breathtaking moment because there he is on national television, and as he's saying this personal story, this ferocious hawk suddenly turns into a very gentle man. His eyes swelled up with tears, and it was very clear that he meant every single word that he was saying. But you know, I thought he was really poetic when he explained that losing his parents at such a young age, it taught him, as he said, that the promise of tomorrow, it's really all quite ephemeral. And he learned that so young. And I also thought it was so poetic when he said, we're all just one car wreck away from needing help. You know, this little vignette into the man, regardless of what you think about what he says on foreign affairs and on politics, it really shows you how many hurdles he overcame to get to, and it's remarkable that he's got even, you know, it's remarkable to overcome those hurdles, period, let alone overcome all those hurdles and rise to be not just a senator, but a very prominent senator, and one who is now also being talked about as possibly taking a run for the GOP nomination. He's going to try to become the next president of the United States. An incredible story of triumph, incredibly narrated with so much humility and so much wisdom, and also a story of how the rest of the family stepped in at a moment of crisis to help what were two orphan kids, basically, help raise them. And obviously, the aunt and uncle did an awesome job by raising kids that turned out to be very conscientious and capable and compassionate and giving individuals. And in the case of Senator Lindsey Graham, very accomplished individuals. So I was really moved by that. And I think that one of the things that it shows is that sometimes we think we know a public figure. And all of a sudden, there's a dimension to their lives that we discover and we see them in a whole new light. That was a transformative experience for me this weekend when I saw that interview. I realized that a man that I think has so many sound principles in foreign affairs also has such a compelling personal story that is an inspiration, whether one is a Republican or a Democrat. This man overcame tremendous odds, and he overcame them not only alone, but by bringing up his baby sister along with him. An incredible journey all the way to a very prestigious position in the Senate today. So that kind of a story really shows that in America, all things are possible. And what I like best about Lindsey Graham is, although he's been a national figure for so long, so much of that is little known. And that speaks to us about his humility. It tells us about he's not parading this tragedy every single day. It actually was just asked impromptu by Chris Wallace, and suddenly we got a vignette into this man's personal history and a vignette right into his soul. This is Dr. Grace. Thanks for joining us this week. It was a pleasure doing the show. I hope you enjoyed it too. Join me every week. Have a great one. This is Dr. Grace, upholding values that will never, ever die.
I was born by God's dear grace.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.